Hey guys, Turner Roland with Waypoint TV here. I'm sitting here with Benny Blanco from Guiding Flow, and we're going to have a great conversation about conservation and what it means to him and what we're up to here at iCAST. So, Benny, for those that are unfamiliar with our audience, would you mind kind of just giving a summary of what you do and
Sure.
what you're about?
Sure. I am Captain Benny Blanco. I'm a full-time fishing guide in South Florida. That's what I do. That's what I am. That's what I was born to do. I also have a TV show called Guiding Flow, which is hosted on Waypoint TV. And I decided to do that because I felt like the culture in the industry was lacking. I felt like we needed to make it cool again to talk about water issues, to talk about conservation, to understand our responsibility as members of this industry to speak up for the water and the land that we love. And what I've found in the work that we've done through Captains for Clean Water and Bone Sharp and Trust through the last 5-6 years is that no one's going to fight for it like we are. Like, just there's not even a close assimilation to someone who's going to fight for it like we are.
As anglers.
As stakeholders for those places, whether it's woods or water. If we want to protect it for the future, we cannot rely on someone else to do it. So I viewed the show as an avenue to teach the masses about what the actual issues were, the connectivity to anglers and hunters like us, the power of your voice, using your voice, what it means. And in the last 5-6 years, you've seen that change. It has been the driving force in all the positive things that's happened in Tallahassee and DC because we have an educated and engaged community unlike we've ever had before. So the show's has been a major tool in making that happen. So I'm super grateful for the platform that Waypoint has provided. Again, I'm not a TV show host. I'm a second-rate TV show host. I do it so that we can educate and do all those things I just mentioned. I'm a fishing guide, and I'm just grateful that you guys have given me the ability to get on that soapbox and hold that megaphone and teach a little bit, and it's been the difference.
Well, we're your biggest supporter, man, and you say that you're kind of a second-class fishing show host, and I disagree. I think your fishing show is fantastic. It's very conservation-focused. And
thank you.
I wanted to ask you, you hear the broad term conservation.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? What does that mean, going to the beach and picking up a piece of trash every day? Does that mean going and protesting at the Capitol? Does that mean sharing your support on social media? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so conservation is a very broad, vague statement. I think the basis for conservation and being a steward of the water or the woods that you love is that you're placing the value of that place above everything else. In other words, instead of progress meaning we're going to build 50 new condos, progress should mean that we're going to construct and develop responsibly so that the environment that we love and want to use isn't damaged for that progress. And so I think if we place the value on the water and the woods that we love appropriately, then we're all conservationists. And I think that's one of the things that's happened for me and all the people that have joined this movement in the last 5-6 years is that we've realized that we are outdoorsmen. I'm a fisherman, we are hunters, right? But we are conservationists first. And we're the loudest and most passionate group of conservationists that exists on this planet. And realizing that is the first step in making those changes.
Right, because we're the ones on the front lines, we're the ones that are enjoying these natural beauties, and we could show other people that they exist and that they're amazing too.
It's a little bit of a double-edged sword. We love it the most because we touch it and use it the most. We live our lives for it, right? But we also get to see it degrade first. And so we love it the most and we see the worst things happening. So we can't expect somebody who doesn't love it as much as us to understand what's going on or even appreciate why it's important. So we have to be the voice.
Yep. Now you talk about seeing things deteriorate, like maybe the Everglades over time. What would you say are the most pressing issues in conservation in terms of fishing today?
Yeah, I mean, you go to any fishery in the country, in the planet probably, but in the country for sure, and there's some type of water issue. And every water issue is somewhat different, but the results are the same. We're losing habitat, we're losing quality of water, and it directly affects the fisheries. And because the water's not high quality, it also affects the land around it. So if you are a hunter, okay, and you hunt turkey or deer, well, you know how important water is to those animals, right? And if the water quality is not great, then you're damaged as well. So anywhere you go, there is a water issue, and the end results are different, but the baseline is that we're losing habitat and the water quality is degrading literally by the minute. And because we aren't speaking up as a community completely yet, those issues are continuing to happen.
Now, water quality issues, what does that necessarily mean? Does that mean that pollutants are being dumped into the rivers and then therefore the oceans, or does that
Sure.
mean that certain algal blooms are coming up?
It's a myriad of things. For sure, our nutrient pollution is the biggest problem. Okay.
So like fertilizer.
It could be fertilizer, it could be wastewater, it could be a number of things. In some cases, it's lack of water, for like the Everglades, for example. We know that Florida Bay, where I fish, the sport fishing capital of the world, Islamorada, is based in Florida Bay. Florida Bay is where saltwater fly fishing was born. It's like the most important bay to our entire industry, okay? And that bay is suffering because it's not getting the fresh water out of the Everglades like it was supposed to. So there, it's not nutrient pollution, it's lack of fresh water. But it's still a water quality issue because of that. Because we don't get the fresh water, it's hypersaline. Hypersaline means it's too salty. This summer, we had saltwater measurements, salinity measurements, 50 to 60 parts per thousand, which is almost double seawater. So Florida Bay, which is typically a brackish estuary, was saltier than seawater. So if you don't think there's a problem there, then we're not speaking the same language. And so that's a water quality issue that isn't necessarily related to nutrient pollution, but most of the issues in the country are nutrient pollution related.
Right, and so what's happening there is the salinity is doubled.
Right.
Because the water's not coming from Lake Okeechobee.
That's right.
Because it's dammed up.
That's right.
Right?
There's a dam around the lake. In the 20s, there was a major hurricane. There was two major hurricanes. The lake overflowed, flooded the surrounding communities and killed thousands of people. So they had to put a dam around the lake. Those people live in areas that historically weren't areas that you could live in, but we drained the swamp back in the 20s because we wanted to, in the name of progress, be able to cultivate that land. Well, we didn't know what we were doing was destroying the Everglades, the natural flow, which the entire state of Florida revolves around. We're learning that now. We know that now. And so now we're trying to fix it. We're trying to go back 100 years to how Mother Nature had it in the first place. That's why you hear us say, send the water south, clean the water, send it to the Everglades. It solves all the major issues, water quality issues in South Florida. People don't even know that over 9 million people in South Florida rely on the fresh water in the Everglades. And we're allowing it to be dammed up and used. It's very counterintuitive, but it comes down to education, which is why the show is so important. Why Waypoint, the ability to give us that megaphone and that soapbox and teach people is so important. The more people that understand, the more effective we can be, which as evidenced in February, I'm sure you saw that huge battle over Senate Bill 2508. The entire country showed up. We had over 50,000 signatures on a petition. Every single state in the country was represented on that petition. It speaks volumes to our ability to use platforms like Waypoint to educate everyone. And that's how we make a difference.
Yeah, it is, and I certainly signed that ballot and shared it, and encouraged everyone to do so. And it's
Right.
things like that I think really make progress, is the education and showing what it could be like,
Sure.
and what it has been like, and how kind of forward progress in the industrial world and civilization has slowed progress or deteriorated the estuaries. Now,
Right.
just so our audience is familiar and your audience is familiar,
Yeah.
what's the other forces here? What's the counter side of this? Why do people want to keep the dams in place?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually a special interest issue. In the Everglades, it most certainly is a special interest issue. There's There's a particular user group on the agriculture side in the central Florida that wants to control the water for very good reason. I mean, if you don't understand the value of the Everglades and what it does downstream, then your priority is to hold the water, because then you need to have irrigation for your crops. I completely get it. The problem is that the water is supposed to be managed in the state of Florida for all user groups. And the health of the Everglades is as important to agriculture and everybody in the state as it is to our fishing and our way of life. And so I think in almost every situation in the country, when you go around, there is a special interest group or two who don't understand the entire big picture, who are doing what's best for their particular industry. And you can't necessarily fault them for that, but part of how we get to the resolution in all these places is through education. I think if we can become more effective storytellers, if we can explain what the issues are, what they're doing, how it causes damages in the areas that we love, and then the overall long-term effects, I think we can come to resolutions in most places. But it's always a special interest group, and it's always in the name of progress. And so, again, you can't necessarily blame them, but we have to find resolution. We have to find a compromise, because we cannot move forward at the pace that we're moving. Like, we talk about it all the time. You talk to any of the old timers, you talk to Flip, you talk to Chico, you talk to any of the old timers, and they'll tell you 30, 40 years ago, they didn't think the resources would ever end. Like, there was enough fish for everybody, there was enough space for everybody, and we know now that's not true. And we know now that if we continue the status quo for what we've done for the last 30, 40 years, it will not be here in 30, 40 years. And so it seems kind of ironic, we're in a huge conference center with all these huge businesses that represent, $100 and something billion in economic activity in the state of Florida every year. An industry that literally is teetering on our ability to save these places.
Yep.
Will this be here in 20 years? Not at the current pace. So I think we have to start finding those middle grounds with those special interest groups, start educating the masses and those special interest groups, and find a way to do both.
Now, we've kind of focused on the downsides of all of this, but conservation efforts, they do pay off.
Oh yeah.
Could you give some examples of some success stories
Sure.
that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the Everglades right now, there's some success stories, but maybe the most famous one in the state of Florida, if we're staying on that theme, was Tampa Bay. In the 80s, Tampa Bay was basically the dumping pool for all the sewage all around. And the water was green, there was no grass. The fishery was damaged, depleted, and they started addressing all of their wastewater issues on a city level. Every single city around the bay started addressing it, every county started addressing it, the state supported it, and today there's grass and there's fish. It's one of the healthiest fisheries in the state of Florida. They still have their issues, and they're still combating, the growth, the amount of the fast-growing cities that are on the bay. So it's a constant battle. But they came back from literally a destroyed completely fishery, and it bounced back to one of the best fisheries in the state of Florida. So there's evidence that if we do spend the money, the return on investment on the environment is like the best bang for our buck in the state by far. In the Everglades, there's something like 70 projects within the Central Everglades Restoration Plan. We've only seen a couple come to fruition or even close to fruition, and the results of that are instantaneous. We instantly have grass starting to grow back. We instantly have fish in areas they haven't been in years.
Like more fresh water coming in? Or?
In certain areas, yeah. It's not a complete system. It's just pieces, but if you look at the individual pieces where fresh water is starting to flow like it was supposed to, it bounces back immediately.
That's so interesting, man, because during COVID, you saw all these like abandonments of places, and all the wildlife started to come back.
That's right.
And I mean, I'm very optimistic about the future, because I think that if you give things a chance, life is very resilient.
Yep.
And it has a very strong will to live, and I really think that if given the chance, these resources can come back. And it's very easy to focus on the downsides of what's happening,
Yep.
but it's also just as easy to focus on the potential upsides of what could happen given, that just a few key events
Yeah.
happen. Maybe this dam on Lake Okeechobee goes away and the fresh water is restored into the Everglades or whatever it may be. But back on Tampa, Tampa is an interesting example because, it's right next to a huge city,
Yeah.
but it's also a great fishery. And
Right.
you hear these stories of like the recent phosphorus mine coming up and these big fish kills. Could you shed some light on what exactly is happening in Tampa Bay right now?
Yeah. So I mean, it's like I said, it's a constant battle. We're growing faster than we can adapt, and that's where it comes down to what I said before, which is there's absolutely a way that we can continue to grow and develop, but responsibly. We have to place the environment first. If the environment is our priority, if the water quality is our priority, if maintaining our wild places in Florida is a priority, then when we build new construction, we're building it with that in mind. We're not creating septic tanks that leach into the system. We make sure that our water is used responsibly. And if we do those few things, then we can grow while we're maintaining the environment. And so Piney Point, the phosphorus issue, was a perfect example where we allow phosphate mining in places for a lot of really bad reasons. And phosphate mining is terrible for the environment. We didn't place the environment first there. We allowed them to come in and mine and then leave this retention, this pond of nuclear waste basically, for us to maintain for forever. And it's just a perfect example of us not placing the environment first. And I think in the state of Florida, honestly, in any community, any state, county, city where tourism is the number one commodity, it's our number one economic driver in the year. If it's our number one economic driver, it has to be our number one priority. And in the state of Florida, it's not that way. It's progress first, environment second, and we're paying for that now. Tampa Bay is a perfect example of that. At some point, we lost it all, and then they put all their marbles back into fixing it, and they fixed it, and then we forgot about it.
You can kind of see it trickling back
for sure
to the way it was.
For sure.
So in the past, you focused on specifically Tampa as kind of a microcosm of, the conservation efforts in Florida. Right. So could that be replicated?
For
again?
sure. It already is.
Yeah.
It already is. Everywhere that we've been able to educate on a industry side, starting with anglers and then getting into the actual industry of people in this building, and then we start doing TV shows and we start influencing legislators by showing up to county meetings, by making our voices heard. It's already making change. And those little things like what happened in Tampa are happening all over the state of Florida. But Tampa's a perfect example. We can't take our foot off the pedal, because the second you do, then Piney Point happens. And we just can't do it anymore. Like I said, we don't have another 30 years of not placing the environment first if we want to have an environment to fish and hunt. And so we have to continue to educate. We have to continue to use platforms like Waypoint to educate. We have to continue showing up at all those meetings, continue forcing environment and the water issues and the land issues to be first. And if we do, then we can develop Florida responsibly, and we'll have these places to pass down to our kids and our grandkids.
So you talk about educating the public and consumers of fishing and hunting content. What are some things that people can do?
Yeah.
Does it come down to just the boat, or does it come down to other things that you can do on a daily basis?
I think it's about evaluating your life. It starts with, are you using single-use plastics every day? And if you are, can you adjust slightly to not? That's one way you can get involved. Are you showing up to local community meetings where the people are talking about water issues, or are you showing up when the county has a new zoning meeting where they're going to take the last 20 acres and make it new condominiums? Are you explaining what those issues are? Do you understand even what the water quality issues are in your county? So it comes down to changing how you view your footprint in your life. and not necessarily looking at the overall industry. And that's what I think we do with the show, is we go into each of the areas, we talk about exactly what the water issues are in that specific area, and then we attach it to somebody in that area who people look up to. So they understand how it affects their life and what the changes they've made in their life, so that they can duplicate those changes in their life. And I think if we did that overall, we started evaluating what our impact is, what our voice impact is, and started utilizing those changes for the betterment of the future, then we're talking about, what, 8 million people in the state of Florida that have fishing licenses doing the right thing every single day. That's a huge impact immediately.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the polls, right, voting, I always get confused on, which politician is for what cause, what their actual agenda is. Is there an easy way that someone can, log on to a site and say, okay, the Everglades is the most important thing for me. How does that affect my voting?
Yeah.
Who do I even trust?
There isn't an easy site, unfortunately, but the water and land issues are bipartisan. So it's not a blue versus red. It's not a red versus blue thing. It is a individual legislator thing. And so the more educated you are on what the issues are, again, going back to education as being the baseline, then the more you understand what each one of those legislators bring to the table when they're what they're promising in their campaign. And I can tell you that I voted all across the board last time. And the results of our voting as an industry correctly, you're seeing it right now. We had a governor who vetoed a massive attack on the Everglades. We've had House of Representatives and senators fight 2018 when the campaign happened. So that baseline of education is making change. Unfortunately, there isn't a website that breaks down each legislator, and I think it depends on where you're from as well. If you're in Tampa and I'm in the Everglades, our needs are slightly different, and so I think it goes back to educating yourself on what the issues are that affect the water that you love, the land that you love, and making sure that you align with a politician in your area that puts those same priorities that you do.
Great. So that's, a few things that people can do. Stop using so many single-use plastics. Just be aware of your consumption and what you're putting back into the environment. These things don't degrade easily. Right. Educate yourself on political issues and make sure that you're voting as you're aligned with your views.
That's right.
Now, let's switch the conversation a little bit to what you're doing with Guiding Flow.
Sure.
What excites you as you move forward?
I love telling the story. Fishermen are storytellers. We just are. Hunters are storytellers.
Yep.
I mean, from when you went on your first hunt or your first fishing adventure, you came back and undoubtedly told somebody some type of big fish tale. Okay, that fish was the biggest fish of all time.
It grows and grows and
we
grows.
are storytellers, right? And so what I've learned in the last 3 years doing filming for Guiding Flow is that the water issues are important, the location is important, but what's really, really special is the people who rely on those places and their story. And so what excites me about Guiding Flow is being able to tell their stories. And then naturally, everyone can relate. I may not be Flip Pallet, okay, but he can tell me a story about when he was 30 years old and he first experienced something, and I can think about a story that was similar that I did. Yep. And so when I can tell these stories and how important the environment is to realizing those stories in our lives, then that's what excites me, because that's what motivates people to do the right thing.
What kind of stories are you going to be telling on this next season? Are you going to be focusing mostly on the Everglades, or are you going to be bouncing around a little bit?
Yeah, we are always Everglades heavy.
Yeah.
Because it's the #1 issue in the state of Florida, but it's also where I'm from.
And it's just a great fishery.
It's a great fishery, and it affects actually 3 major fisheries. So there's the ability to tell the story over and over and over again in different ways, but actually hammer home the same point. And so we are always Everglades heavy, and that content is insane. I don't want to leak it too much, but we had a couple great shows filming adventures already. One with Chris Whitman from Capt Clean Water, where we put him on his first ever slam and in epic fashion in the Florida Keys, and the footage related to that is just off the charts. I cannot wait to share.
That's awesome, man. Well, we at Waypoint are so excited that you're a part of this, and we are just, we're for you, man. We're for guiding flow, we're for you, we're for these conservation issues, and we're just so proud to be able to share that message and to boost you out to, what, 126 million people, and to have this platform to be able to really make a difference with producers like you who, we're mutually aligned on what's important to us, and we're your number one cheerleader, and we're just so excited that you're on Waypoint, and we look forward to seeing what else you can do.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys have been from the get-go. The first time I mentioned I wanted to do it, most people in this building were skeptical that we could actually do a fishing show and talk about water issues. Like, that seems counterintuitive, right? And when I first brought that to Waypoint, I mean, there was no hesitation. It was, an ability to take the platform we're building and do good with it. I mean, there's a certain value into being successful in business, period, and Waypoint is successful, there's no doubt, but there's an even greater, more valiant value when you can use that platform for good.
Yep.
And in this case, we're not only doing it, but we're seeing the results of it, and that's super special.
So exciting, man. So exciting. I'm optimistic for the future in terms of restoration and conservation. I just think we got to keep our foot on the gas and not let up. When we see a little progress, let's get some more of that. Let's keep on the pedal. Let's educate more people. Let's blast your message out to a larger audience.
That's right.
And Benny, I thank you for coming on this live stream podcast and stopping by the booth, and I just really look forward to seeing what else you can do with us, man.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right, have a great show.
Yeah, you too, man.